everyone, Christina here. Welcome to day 7 of the holiday card series for 2017. Today I'm using the Sentiments from a Yeti stamp set from Mama Elephant. It goes with a Yeti stamp set, as well as the Whimsical Winter stamp set. So the Sentiments from a Yeti has this great greeting in there that I thought would be really cool embossed in gold. So I'm using some Neenah Solar White cardstock here. This is the 80-pound version, and I'm prepping that with an anti-static powder tool so that when I stamp my sentiment and add the embossing powder, that I only get the embossing powder in areas where there's stamped ink. So I'm inking up my stamp with Versamark. I'll press that down, and then I'm going to apply some gold embossing powder, and this gold embossing powder is from Brutus Monroe. This is the gilded color. And I'm just going to sprinkle that on and then tap my cardstock so that it shakes off all of the excess embossing powder. I'm going to take my heat tool and heat set that until the embossing powder is smooth and melted. I'll also hit the back of my cardstock just to help with a little bit of the warping. So I've got my circle die set here from Simon Says Stamp. This is the Nested Circles die set. And I'm going to use one of the smaller circles as a guide to draw on with pencil a circle around this entire sentiment. And I'm going to use this penciled circle for some stamping. I'm going to take some different colors of ink from Simon Says Stamp. I've got Schoolhouse Red, Olive, and Catkin. And I'm going to take 2 little itty bitty stamps from that Mama Elephant stamp set. This is the Whimsical Winter. I'm just using that kind of like pine needle branch and also this little star. And I'm going to build a wreath. So I'm going to start with the Catkin color, and because I only have one stamp to work with, I'm going to try to kind of turn the pine needle stamp and kind of angle it in different ways so that as I add this going all the way around the wreath, that none of them look too much like it's all the same. And once I have the second color on there, it will look even better. I am leaving some slight gaps in between these as well so that I can fill them in with the darker color. So now I'm coming in with that olive shade. And I'm doing the same thing that I did before, which is kind of twist and turn these pine needles so that they don't all look exactly the same. And I like that these are kind of like splayed out a little bit so that I have the opportunity to really nestle them in side of one another. So I'm going to finish stamping all of that olive green color. And then I'm going to take that off my block and switch to the star stamp and the Schoolhouse Red ink. And by adding in these little pops of red, it kind of fills in some of those gaps on the wreath. And it also makes it sort of feel like berries on a Christmas wreath. I think it's kind of a fun way to build your own wreath. So I have a little bit of red that was on the edge of my block that kind of stamped down right underneath the word you. So I am going to clean that up here. I first erased my pencil lines, and then now I have this sand eraser from Tombow. This is their mono eraser, and it's kind of like a really finely grit sand, and it kind of rubs the surface of your paper and takes off any ink smudges. So I'm really lightly rubbing this until that red goes away. And then to smooth it out and make it look a little bit better, I just run a regular eraser over the top, and that kind of presses down any paper fibers and smooths things out. So now I'm back to that nested circle die set, and I'm using the slightly larger circle, and I run that through my Big Shot machine to create this circle piece here. So now I'm going to take some red cardstock. This is cherry red cardstock from Gina K. I think it might be one of my most favorite red shades, and I'm using it a lot for this holiday card series. And I'm going to take the even larger circle die from that same nested circle die set, and I'm putting it onto the paper. And I scored that at 5.5, and I'm having the circle die kind of go off the edge of that fold. It's just hanging off the edge there, so that after I run it through my Big Shot machine, it still has the fold intact. So now I have a circle die card base. So now I'm going to take the plaid background stamp set from Concord and Ninth, and I'm first going to stamp the most of the circle here. Unfortunately, the stamp wasn't large enough to cover that entire circle, but pretty close. I'm using some Raven ink from Brutus Monroe. This is a black, very detailed ink. It's great for detail stamps, and I'm inking up this plaid. inking it up really, really well. And then I'll go ahead and swing the door of my MISTI over and press this down. Now, I'm not going to try to double stamp this because it's hard to keep that in place without having much area for a magnet to be. So whatever stamp I got, I had to deal with it. And then to finish off that little section, the background stamp does have to overlap one row. So I got that in place on my MISTI, and then I took some Post-it tape and just masked off that very edge from the previous stamping. I'm going to ink up the top edge of that background stamp because I only need that small little portion on the edge of that circle, and then I'll bring this over and stamp it down. And this is just going to continue that plaid background pattern to all edges of the circle base, card base. So you can see how it finishes this off. I'll just take off that Post-it tape and it finishes off that pattern. So to make this plaid pattern even better, you could leave it like this, but I'm going to make it even better by adding some really thin pinstripes. So these two stripes are included in that plaid background stamp set, and they're spaced perfectly for you to stamp the lines in between all of the rows of stamping. So I'm going to go both directions and add this on. And I am going to be doing this with gold embossing powder again, so I did prep that area with an anti-static powder tool, and I want to make sure that I get all of that excess powder off of the areas of this card base. So I did use a paintbrush to kind of brush off any powder that was around the edges, but I knew I would be covering the center of this card base, so I didn't bother brushing off any of that gold embossing powder from the center. So I'm pressing down my stamped piece right over the top. And that finishes the card for today. This was a really simple card, even though there were many steps involved. Hope you guys enjoyed. I will be back very soon with day 8. Until then, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I'll catch you very, very soon.